Today on Law Weekly, we'll look at issues of corruption in the judiciary, especially against the background of a recent UNODC report which lists the judiciary as the second most corrupt institution in the country. We have the views of a senior advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Okutepa. We also have the reactions of some lawyers on the president's broadcast after his return from his medical vacation, plus our recap of the top trending stories from the courts. That's the lineup on this episode of Law Weekly. Hello and welcome. I am Shola Shieli. A recent report by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, in conjunction with the National Bureau of Statistics, ranks the judiciary as the second most corrupt institution in Nigeria. The report says 33% of Nigerian citizens have had bribery contact with prosecutors and 31.5% with judges and magistrates. But are things really as bad as the report makes it sound? I have the views of a senior advocate of Nigeria on the issue, and I began by getting his comments on the report.
I read also the refuter of the National Judicial Council. No doubt in Nigeria there are good judges and good judicial officers, very credible one at that. But let me say that the corruption in the judiciary is like the level of the wind is blowing, but it's very difficult for you to catch. And so to say there is no corruption in the judiciary is to admit that you are not speaking the truth. There are, and when I talk about corruption in the judiciary, I think we have this misconception that is limited only to judicial officers. No. And I think that the level of corruption in the judiciary permeates from the filing to service of processes to every other thing, including compilation of records and so on and so forth, to the extent that if you go to some courts, you will see notices being pasted there that bailiffs should not follow after lawyers. And some bailiffs of court have also perfected the act that even when they have money to go for service, because they want to extract money from you, they call you at odd hour, at ugly hour, and you become like the place they go to feast. So particularly when you have the misfortune to handle some controversial and very highly sensitive matters. So they don't make a distinction between the cases you are doing pro bono, very highly publicized case or cases. So once you appear, and the people that have the misfortunes of even being confronted with this extortionist attitude from this lower cadre within the judiciary are senior advocates of Nigeria, particularly those who are not prepared to succumb to the blackmailing antics of, if you don't give me money, I'm not going to serve, I'm not going to give you a copy of the processes, of the proof of service. So you can see sometimes you have a very good case, proof of service disappears, the bailiff is not around. So that are part of what constitutes corruption. And there are some of these lower cadre officers in the judiciary that may hold themselves out as acting as fronts for their lordships, and they may not know.
You have rightly identified where corruption is located in the judiciary. You've talked about the judges, the lawyers, and the support staff. We'll come back to the lawyers and the judges, but let's talk about the support staff. What can be done to make them less corrupt? Do you agree with the suggestion that they should be subjected to the civil service rules as well as to the NJC's disciplinary powers?
Speaking for myself, the fight against corruption in Nigeria must go beyond what we are seeing now. I am one of the lawyers that believe that you cannot fight corruption with the necessities of this fundamental freedom that I talk about. For me, whether they are subjected to NJC, civil service rules, or any other rules, the question is who applies the rule to these subordinate staff who are necessary judicial officers who may not even be lawyers, but have wielded very powerful connections. So it appears to me, with respect, and as the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osibajo, put it, those who engage themselves in corruption are united by one common denominator, and that is self. So some of these some of these non-judicial officers who have been emboldened and who have these emboldened capacities and who have these tenacities of purpose to do these corrupt tendencies have their connections.
Let's talk about the judges. Some people think that the process of appointment and elevation of judges encourages corruption. They suggest that there needs to be some reform with more emphasis on merit. What do you think?
I have always said so, because we have, I think Nigeria is the only country where people appear to be more religious and are far from God. Why do I say so? Because merit play very crucial role, but because of dominance of one section of the society against other section, we have what we call federal character. And I'm not against federal character, but within the ambit of even federal character, for instance, let us look for the best. So we must make the appointment of our judicial officers as transparent, as open, as honest as possible.
But how?
For instance, in other jurisdictions, there are some background checks you need to do against somebody who is to be a judge, because a judge is next to God. He's the one that will sentence somebody to death. And so if he's a person that has the character of Esau and that he can sell his birthright just for a pot of porridge, then we don't need that person to be a judge.
Are you faulting the current procedure?
He needs to